Hey guys, welcome back. So today I brought home this 8,000 watt Titan generator. It was listed only at $75 and in the description stated that it would run only on starting fluid for a few seconds and then stall. So that's all I needed to hear. I mean, the condition of this looks pretty good, and if it does in fact run on starting fluid, it says we have spark, timing, and compression. We just don't have fuel. So I'm going to get you set up a little bit better and check out that carb. I'm going to start by opening up this drain. I want to see if there's anything in the carb. Wow. The fuel is actually supposed to come out down here, but it is clogged up, so not a big deal. It'll drain that way too. I'm just going to open up the fuel valve, make sure the gas is making it down to the carb. Okay, good. So there's no issue with fuel delivery from the tank to the carb. The issue must be in here. There's nowhere else it can be. So we'll get that off and up on the bench and see what's going on in there. I do have the cover for this box. It came uninstalled. So I'm just gonna get these two bolts out. There's probably one back here. Then we can start working away at this up here. Something doesn't seem right. It just looks like it's fully choked. You can't turn it off. Could be as simple as that. The solenoid's still connected, the wiring, and it comes over here. One of the wires is a quick disconnect up here, and the other one actually I think is just a ground wire being held on by that bolt up in there. So get that bolt out of the way, free up the wires, and then we can pull them out and get that carb off. I don't think this one's going to be too bad. Well, someone's already cut this, so not a big deal. They're usually not that necessary. It's just serving to plug the hole at this point. But one thing worth noting, in tractors, these function differently. When you put the key to on, this retracts the pin. In the generator, that's not the case. When the engine's running, And when it's off, the pin is retracted. The only time this deploys is when you flip the switch to off. The plunger deploys, and then when the generator head loses power because the engine's running too slow, the pin goes back to the open position. Anyway, there is a little bit of meat left in here, so theoretically it can still deploy. It's just not going to work as well. And it may not work at all. Maybe that's why it was cut. So we'll have to test this. Main jet was pretty tight, so I don't think anyone's had that out before. At least not recently. Looks pretty good. And the emulsion tube too. I'm not really seeing any issues with it. So this should have run. I mean, maybe the pilot jet's clogged, but that would just make it hard to start and surge. It should still run. So yeah, maybe it was just the fact that the choke was stuck on causing all the issues. Well, regardless, I'm going to get the pilot jet out. We'll give it a quick bath anyway, just in case, and we'll try starting it. So overall, this carb's in pretty good shape. Just going to run through it with some wires, and we'll soak it, put it back on the machine. Okay, this one has an adjustment screw here for letting more fuel in. So I'm going to count the amount of turns. I'm going to turn it in, count the amount of turns where it's set now. I'll just set it back there after. Half one, half two. Test the solenoid real quick. Yeah, works fine. That didn't need to be cut. Just getting the old fuel out of the tank. It's not terrible, but it is an unknown. I'm not sure how long it's been in there. So we'll get some fresh stuff in there. I want to say it cleaned up well, but it was already clean. And I rinsed it off with water and just blew it dry. So ready to proceed, get this thing together, and see if it'll run. This here is just the idle set screw. Generators don't idle, so you don't want to actually put it in so far that it hits the stop. And in this case, we're not hitting it yet, so I'll just drive it in a bit more. And the main purpose here is just to hold down the pilot jet. And just a side note, I did try to clean this drain out. It was not drilled out. So the only way to drain the bowl is to pull this completely out, which is fine, but I'm not sure why they did it like this. Ready to give this thing a try, and I gotta say my confidence is pretty low. I found no issue with the fuel delivery or the carburetor. And even the choke issue, which I thought was an issue, really is not an issue. This has a vacuum servo on it, so once the engine powers up, it'll draw a vacuum and actually actuate the choke open. So unless that's broken, I don't think that's an issue. Also, the solenoid, the pin was clipped, and even if that wasn't done, the solenoid works. So unless it's a wiring issue where it's just deploying immediately when the generator starts up, I don't think we're going to have an issue here. I think the more likely cause of the shutdown is the low oil system, and you can see someone already unplugged the low oil wire coming from the switch inside the engine. Now, it's actually the module that shuts it down when it gets a consistent signal from that sensor. So these go bad quite often. And in this case, this module, the black wire coming out of it, usually goes right to the ignition coil to kill the engine. This one's a little different. It's actually feeding it up into this mystery box over here, which then feeds it to the coil. So if it does shut down, I'd say it's one of those two items, but let's give it a few pulls and see what we get. That should have started. So let me get the spark tester and see if we have spark. It seems like someone sold a perfectly good generator. My best guess is the spark plug boot was not quite engaging the spark plug. So, it is a little surgy, especially when under load, which is surprising given what I saw in that carb. So I'll check things out a little bit closer. I did plug in the oil sensor and everything kept running. So I don't think we have any major issues going on here. I just need to work out that surge, clean it up, and then we'll do a proper load test. From this angle, it kind of looks like a school bus. I thought this was going to be a little more involved fixing this, but it doesn't look like that's the case. And even the surging, it's really slight and was going away as the engine was warming up. So I'm not going to chase any carb issues right now. I think just adding the airbox will probably richen it up enough. Plus we have that jet on the side, which we can adjust. Now it was originally at 4.5 turns out. When I put it back together, I only did 3.5 because I thought 4.5 seemed a bit much, but maybe that was a mistake. So the only other thing that needs to be done or checked is really what's going on behind the blower housing. When I was editing this video together, I actually noticed two things. First, my new phone that I was recording with for the first half of the video did a terrible job on the audio. At times it sounded like I was underwater, and I've tried to edit that out as much as I can and had to sacrifice some footage and just tried to minimize kind of the annoyance of listening to it. So hopefully it's not too bad. And the other thing I noticed was that when this thing did start, it was blowing junk out past the cooling fins. So there could be a critter, or there was a critter, maybe in the blower housing. So I want to get that off, just make sure there's not a nest in there. Just make sure things are clean in there. Yeah, not too bad. There was something in there. Mostly it was behind the magneto, so I think most of it got blown out, but I do see a little bit up in here, so I'll blow that out, put it back together. The original routing of the fuel line was through here, and then it turned to the carb. And that's fine. I mean, that's the way it has to be. It needs to stay away from this governor arm. But there's really not a lot of room for both the fuel line and this wire here. So I'm gonna actually move this up. There's a hole on the top here. You can probably get a zip tie through that and just hold the wire kind of above the fuel line and just use this piece, the inside diameter, to feed the line through. Almost forgot the fuel filter. It was installed right about there, and I'm all out of fuel filters, so I do need to reuse the old one. I know it was good because we did test the flow through it. Now, some people say you're supposed to put the fat end toward the tank. So I don't think it really matters. It's just a screen in there. This one can go either way, but this one was installed that way. So I do want to make sure I put it back the same way, because any sediment that's in there is on this side. If I reverse it, it's just going to send it all into that carb. So last, we just got to connect the breather hose to the air box to the valve cover. And this is what came with this machine. It's short by a few inches. It ripped off. And also you can see here what's left is damaged. So I can't reuse this. Luckily, the last time I ran into this, I ordered a few extra. And they are hard to locate. The engine I was last working on was on a Home Light. Same engine, but they don't stock the part anymore. And Titan might, I'm not sure, but I know Generac does, so that's where I got them from, and this is a perfect fit. Everything's hooked up. I've got 2 space heaters ready to put a 3,000 watt load on. And one interesting thing worth noting is that, this is rated at 8,000 watts. Actually, I don't know if it's rated. Most likely that's surge. But on the 120 volt outlet side, we're limited to 20 amps. So I did have to use this breakout cord in order to get enough power to run 2 space heaters. So let's get this thing started. We'll see how the surging does now that the air box is on. And also that screw on the side of the carb, I actually turned it in. So now it's 2.5 turns out, which is a bit counterintuitive. I do want to richen it up, but at 4.5 turns, it's ready to fall out. And that's going to create an air leak and pretty much do the opposite of what we're trying to do. So we'll start it like this and go from there. We're at 62.1 hertz, 125 volts. That's perfect. .8 hertz. 128 volts. Not too bad. Not too bad. Started right up. Sounds good. Surging is not an issue. And handled the load just fine. So we know the engine's good. The power output's good. The voltage is a bit on the high side, but it's on the high side of what I'd consider okay. It was actually a bit surprising when loading it up. The voltage usually stays the same or drops. In this case, it actually went up a couple volts, but I think we're good. This machine I thought was going to be more involved. Turns out it was just a spark plug wire that wasn't quite plugged in all the way. So I'm going to get this back inside, change the oil while it's hot, but for the purposes of this video, I think I'm done. So hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.